There, on the vast plains of Kosovo, the fate of Eastern Europe was decided. A Christian army, led by Serbian princes, rose to face the advancing Ottoman Empire, and on that day, the world stood still. But who really won, and what has been hidden? For centuries, this is the forgotten story of the Battle of Kosovo. And if you think you've heard everything about medieval wars, think again. Subscribe to the channel and prepare for one of the bloodiest, most symbolic and controversial battles in history. In the late 14th century, the Balkan Peninsula stood as a patchwork of fractured kingdoms, fragile alliances, and fading glory. Among them, the Principality of Serbia, led by Prince Lazar Rebelovic, was one of the last true Christian strongholds. In the region, his rule came at a time of great peril, not just for Serbia, but for the future of Eastern Europe itself. The once powerful Serbian Empire, built under Tsar Dušan, had splintered after his death. Regional lords held more power than kings, and unity was a memory rather than a reality. Prince Lazar sought to change that. From his court in Kruševac, he worked tirelessly to consolidate territory, forge ties with the church, and prepare his realm for the storm he knew was coming. That storm had a name: the Ottoman Empire to the east. The Ottomans had grown from a small Anatolian beylik into a disciplined war machine under Sultan Murad, the first, with Constantinople still standing but surrounded, and Bulgaria already falling under Ottoman pressure. Serbia's lands became the next target on a map marked by imperial ambition. The Ottomans moved swiftly and ruthlessly. Their military was unlike anything the Serbs had faced before. Well organized, professional, and led by a sultan who combined battlefield skill with brutal pragmatism. Town by town, region by region, they approached the Danube. Behind them, scorched earth. Ahead of them, Europe. Prince Lazar knew the threat. He tried to form alliances with King Tevcio of Bosnia, with Hungary, even with independent lords whose loyalty often shifted with the wind. But unity came slowly, and time was short. While some lords were hesitant to challenge the Ottomans directly, Lazar made his stand. He rallied what forces he could: knights, peasants, monks with swords. All were called to take up arms. For Lazar, this was not just about defending land. It was about defending a way of life, a faith, and a people who had already seen too many crosses burned and too many churches turned to ash. The enemy was approaching. The plains of Kosovo, Polji, would soon run red. But in the face of overwhelming odds, Serbia stood, proud, fractured, defiant, a kingdom on the edge of a storm. As the 14th century waned, a new power thundered toward Europe's gates: the Ottoman Empire, led by Sultan Murad, the first unlike the fractious Christian kingdoms of the Balkans. The Ottomans advanced with singular focus and purpose. They were not merely expanding territory, they were forging a world empire, with one eye on Constantinople and the other on Central Europe. Sultan Murad was no ordinary ruler. The son of Orhan, he inherited a young but hungry empire. Under his command, the Ottomans solidified control over Western Anatolia, then crossed the Dardanelles into Europe. The small victories soon became strategic conquests. City after city fell, some through siege, others through submission, but always under the shadow of Ottoman dominance. Their strategy was calculated and relentless. The Ottoman army moved like a tide, composed of skilled Ghazis, elite Janissaries, and cavalry forces that could strike swiftly and disappear. Where force failed, diplomacy stepped in. Murad offered vassalage to Balkan rulers, autonomy in exchange for tribute, loyalty, and sons taken as hostages to serve in the Ottoman ranks. But for those who resisted, terror followed. Villages burned, nobles were impaled. Slavery and conscription decimated the populations of conquered lands. The Ottomans understood that fear could be as powerful as steel. By the 1370s, Murad had captured Adrianople, modern-day Edirne, and made it the new capital of his empire in Europe. It became the staging ground for further invasions, a gateway to the Balkans. From there, Murad looked west, towards Serbia, Bosnia, and Hungary. To him, the Balkans were not just buffer states. They were the soft underbelly of Christendom, the bridge to the riches of Central Europe and beyond. If the Ottoman war machine could crush resistance here, nothing would stop them from pressing into Vienna, perhaps even Rome. Resistance was mounting, but it was disorganized. Balkan leaders were divided by old feuds and fragile alliances. Some submitted to Murad's terms, hoping to buy time. Others, like Prince Lazar of Serbia, chose defiance. The storm was gathering, and soon it would crash upon the plains of Kosovo, where the fate of empires would hang in the balance. Sultan Murad had knocked. The world was about to answer. As the Ottoman tide pressed deeper into the Balkans, Prince Lazar Rebelovic understood a terrible truth. Serbia stood alone at the edge of annihilation. There would be no lasting peace, no more appeasement, only a final stand. In the spring of 1389, he sent word across the fractured Slavic lands. The time had come to resist. Knights, noblemen, and warriors answered the call. From the rolling fields of Umedija to the mountains of Zeta, lords brought what forces they could. Even Bosnian King Tevtko I, despite tensions with Lazar, pledged men. Volunteers poured in, Montenegrins, Vlachs, Hungarians, and Christian. Albanians, all drawn by the desperate hope of halting the Ottoman advance. Serbia had become the front line of Christendom. Lazar's army was not vast, but it was fiercely motivated. Feudal cavalry, hardened footmen, and archers trained by years of skirmishes with the Turks now gathered near the town of Pristina, close to the plains of Kosovo, Polji. They camped in the shadow of prophecy and fate. But this was more than military mobilization. It was spiritual monasteries, became armories. Monks blessed swords and baked bread. Women stitched banners and nursed the wounded. Mothers kissed sons goodbye, knowing they might never return. In candlelit chapels, priests led prayers that echoed through the valleys. Serbia was not merely preparing for battle, it was preparing for martyrdom. Religious omens stirred the hearts of warriors and civilians alike. Tales spread of heavenly visions. Some spoke of Saint Sava weeping at the state of his people. Others saw crosses in the sky. A monk, Father Danilo, claimed a dream in which Lazar stood before Christ, offered a choice, a heavenly kingdom through sacrifice, or earthly victory and power. Lazar's decision became legend. He chose eternity over empire. As dawn approached, on June 28, 1389, the feast day of Saint Vitus, the men of Serbia prepared for what would become one of the most fateful battles in European history. They sharpened blades, whispered prayers, and looked eastward, where dust rose on the horizon. The Ottomans were coming. The final resistance had been summoned, and Serbia stood ready, not just to fight, but to die for something greater. The sun rose red over the fields of Kosovo, Polji, on June 28, 1389, Vidovdan, the feast of Saint Vitus. For both the Christian Serbs and the Muslim Ottomans, this was more than a battle. It was divine reckoning. At first light, the two armies assembled across the wide plain. To the north, the Serbian forces under Prince Lazar held formation, their banners of the double-headed eagle fluttering in the wind. Cavalry in shining armor, spearmen, archers, and levies, some noble-born, some farmers turned warriors, stood shoulder to shoulder. On the southern side, the Ottoman host under Sultan Murad, the first stretched like a black tide, tens of thousands of men, janissaries, sipahi, cavalry, and auxiliaries, disciplined and blood-hardened. The stillness before the storm was pierced by Prince Lazar's final prayer. Before his command tent, surrounded by his noblemen and priests, he knelt. Eyes raised to heaven, he offered his soul and the fate of his kingdom. Witnesses say he spoke softly, "We die for the kingdom of heaven, not the glory of this world." Moments later, horns sounded. The charge began. From the Serbian right flank, Vuk Branković's heavy cavalry thundered forward, spears leveled. Arrows filled the sky like a swarm of black locusts. Ottoman archers answered with volleys that darkened the sun. The first clash was deafening, steel against steel, horses screaming, men crushed beneath hooves and blades. The center columns met in brutal melee. Mud turned red with blood as warriors hacked and grappled in close combat. Swords shattered. On shields, lances impaled riders, and screams drowned out commands. The Ottoman janissaries, elite and relentless, pushed into the Serbian line. The Serbs countered with unyielding ferocity. Sweat, blood, and smoke clouded the air. The battlefield became a furnace of death and honor, and yet the lines held hours. Passed, with neither side yielding. The fate of empires hung in the balance. On that sacred day, Kosovo was no longer a field. It was a throne of judgment, where the fate of two worlds collided, and no soul would leave unchanged. June 28, 1389, the day that would echo through centuries. On the plains of Kosovo, two great leaders stood on opposite sides of history. Sultan Murad, the first of the expanding Ottoman Empire, and Prince Lazar Rebelovic, the last great defender of Christian Serbia. Both knew the cost of failure. Both understood that the fate of empires now rested on swords, shields, and faith. As the battle raged with unimaginable ferocity, a figure emerged from legend, Milak Obelik. Some say he was one of Lazar's knights, others claim he was a noble falsely accused of treason, determined to redeem his honor. Whatever the truth, the myth endures. Obelik is said to have infiltrated the Ottoman camp under the pretense of defection. Allowed into tent, he drew a hidden blade and stabbed the Sultan in the stomach, killing him instantly. It was the first and only time in history that an Ottoman sultan was slain in battle. The assassination shook the Ottoman ranks, but not for long. Murad's son, Bazid, swiftly took control, executing his own brother, Yakub, to eliminate any challenge to succession. The Ottomans, fueled by vengeance and discipline, rallied with renewed fury. On the Serbian side, tragedy unfolded just as quickly. Prince Lazar was captured during the chaos, either wounded or betrayed. Stories differ. He was brought before the new sultan and executed soon after. His head displayed as a warning to any who dared resist. Two leaders had fallen. Two nations bled. Yet, despite the losses, the battle itself ended inconclusively. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. Both were broken, but neither crushed. The Serbs, though devastated, had proven that the Ottomans were not invincible. The Ottomans, despite losing their sultan, continued their march westward with unstoppable momentum. The deaths of Murad and Lazar transformed the Battle of Kosovo from a mere military engagement into a sacred saga, one etched into the cultural memory of both East and West. For Serbia, it became a symbol of sacrifice and martyrdom. For the Ottomans, a lesson in the price of conquest. But though the commanders had perished, the war was far from over. The Balkans still burned, and the shadow of the crescent moon continued to stretch across Europe. The blood-soaked fields of Kosovo lay silent after the sunset on June 28, 1389. The clashing of swords, the screams of dying men, and the thunder of war horses had ceased. In their place, smoke, ruin, and uncertainty. The Battle of Kosovo had ended, but no one could say with certainty who had won. Both armies had suffered devastating losses. Tens of thousands lay dead, including many of the noblest warriors from both sides. The Serbian forces, though fighting with bravery and resolve, were crippled, their ranks shattered, their leadership decapitated, quite literally with the execution of Prince Lazar. Yet the Ottomans too reeled from the cost. Sultan Murad, the architect of Ottoman expansion into Europe, was dead, assassinated in the heart of his own camp. For a moment, panic rippled through the Ottoman ranks. But Murad's son, Bazid, acted with brutal efficiency. He seized command immediately, eliminating his own brother Yakub to secure the throne. Within hours, Bazid restored order and began the Ottoman withdrawal, carrying his father's body back in secret. To the outside world, it would appear that the Ottomans had not been shaken at all. Their forces held the field, and Bazid's swift rise projected strength. And yet, despite the Ottomans' outward appearance of control, they did not press further into Serbia immediately. The blow had been deep, and the losses high. The Serbian resistance, while bloodied, had not been crushed. In fact, in the wake of the battle, Serbia still functioned as a vassal state, with Lazar's widow, Princess Milica, assuming leadership and negotiating peace with Bayezid, who had won. Militarily, the Ottomans had the advantage. They could replace their losses with the vast manpower of their empire. Politically, they had asserted dominance over the Balkans. But symbolically, spiritually, Serbia claimed a different kind of victory. The sacrifice at Kosovo became a national myth, with Lazar cast as a Christ-like figure, choosing a heavenly kingdom over an earthly one. It became Serbia's Golgotha, a moment of tragic defiance that would echo for centuries. The truth is stark. The Battle of Kosovo was a Pyrrhic event for both sides. A battlefield soaked in valor and tragedy. A day when no flag flew higher than another dot. In the end, Kosovo was less a triumph, and more a wound shared, remembered, and never fully healed. The Battle of Kosovo did not end with clear victory or defeat, but it marked the birth of a lasting symbol for the Serbian people, a powerful echo that reverberated through centuries of struggle and identity. Kosovo became more than just a battlefield. It became a sacred site of sacrifice, resistance, and national pride in the aftermath. Stories and legends spread across villages and towns, passed down by word of mouth and later recorded in epic poems and songs. These tales celebrated the bravery of Prince Lazar, the heroism of warriors like Milak Obilic, and the tragic nobility of a people who chose honor and faith over surrender. The battle transformed into a mythic moment where sacrifice was glorified as a gateway to eternal glory, inspiring generations to come. The Serbian Orthodox Church played a central role in shaping this narrative. It framed the Battle of Kosovo as a spiritual conflict between good and evil, casting Lazar as a martyr who sacrificed his earthly kingdom for a heavenly one. This religious interpretation created a cult of sacrifice, blending faith with patriotism. Churches were built and monasteries became centers of remembrance and cultural preservation. The battle was commemorated annually, embedding the event deeply into the collective consciousness. This fusion of myth, religion, and history helped forge a resilient national identity, especially during centuries of Ottoman rule and foreign domination. Kosovo became a symbol of hope, endurance, and defiance, a reminder that despite oppression, the spirit of the Serbian people could never be extinguished. It united disparate communities under a shared story of loss and valor. The echo of Kosovo influenced art, literature, and political movements, becoming a rallying cry for independence and cultural revival. It shaped how Serbs saw themselves and their place in history, often referenced during times of crisis as a source of strength and unity. More than a military engagement, the Battle of Kosovo became the heart of Serbian memory, a sacred testament to the cost of freedom and the power of collective sacrifice. Its legacy transcended borders and centuries, a haunting yet inspiring echo that continues to resonate in the soul of Serbia today. Centuries after the clash on the fields of Kosovo, the battle remains one of the most debated and controversial events in Balkan history. What happened on that day in 1389 is shrouded in mystery, myth, and conflicting accounts. Over time, history has been rewritten, reshaped, and weaponized to serve different political and nationalistic agendas. Historical revisionism has played a major role in the legacy of Kosovo. Different narratives emerged, some emphasizing Serbian heroism and martyrdom, others highlighting Ottoman resilience and expansion. These competing versions of history reflect broader struggles over identity, territory, and power in the Balkans. The battle's memory has been used as a tool to unite people, but also to justify divisions and conflicts. Nationalism intensified the myth-making around Kosovo, transforming it into a symbol not just of past sacrifice, but of ongoing cultural and political claims. Leaders and movements have evoked Kosovo to rally support, legitimize sovereignty, and assert rights over disputed lands. This made the battle's memory a living, contested battleground that extends far beyond the 14th century. Propaganda and folklore blurred the line between fact and fiction. Songs, poems, and monuments immortalized heroes and villains, sometimes at the expense of historical accuracy. The idealized image of the battle serves powerful emotional and symbolic purposes, inspiring pride, resilience, and a sense of destiny. Yet, the truth remains complex and often elusive. Scholars continue to debate what really happened, peeling back layers of myth to uncover the realities of medieval warfare, diplomacy, and survival. Understanding these nuances is essential to grasp the full impact of Kosovo on Balkan history. The Battle of Kosovo is more than a historical event. It is a story of memory, identity, and the struggle for meaning in a region shaped by centuries of conflict. Its legacy still influences politics, culture, and relations among nations today. As we reflect on Kosovo's truth and myths, we are reminded how history shapes the present and how vital it is to seek understanding beyond the stories we tell. If you found this story compelling, subscribe and join us as we uncover more hidden truths from history's most defining moments.